your standard push button lock, and we're actually going to take a look at the guts. Let's do this. Whenever you plug up a T2, if you want to reset it, you would just hold the button down. I don't think it's working, y'all. Oh, it does. And it works. However, I don't think it works. It's sad. It's Judgment Day for this. I had to say that. That's part of the title, right? I had to say it. It's Judgment Day for this fella. So if we look really close, a lot of problems comes with the mounting. And we can see, if we look really, really close here, I'll hold this up to the camera a little bit better. We can see some major issues going on right here. Right there. Looks like we definitely have some wiring severs. Yep, we got some silver showing. So likely what's going to happen here is I can probably take this guy apart, and to do that you would we would take this guy here. Normally, like if you're in the field and you're having to do this, you could always maybe cut it as far up as possible and then re-crimp it together. So what, I know, I have an idea. Let's try something, y'all. Need a I'm just going to use this real quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to check, before I go to blowing this thing up, let us check this connection right here. I think we're good right up to this area. I think we're good right up until this area. So what happens is, why this gets crimped is because you have the plate that goes right here that for some reason is not here. Oh, here it is. And when this gets routed up, it's very important when you're installing these, or when you're, especially if you're taking these off to service them, that when this plate goes back on, that it goes through that hole right there that it's supposed to. Because you see what happens when you don't. If there's any crimpage, or if there's any issues with these wires, you will have you'll have problems with it for sure. I definitely wanted to use Peter's tool that he sent me, or the tool that Peter sent for me, but it's in my truck. So let's just use this in the meantime. It activates that, which is what allows the lock to unlock. Supposed to do this with my teeth, right, Ryan? Or am I supposed to hold it in my teeth when I power it up? I think that's what's supposed to happen. Oh man, I just untwisted. Okay, go back the other way. We'll do this too, so we can see it even better. Maybe. Yeah, there may still be something wrong with the latch retractor here, because I mean it is old as heck. And that was one of the problems. Like, it was working for a while. Oh, what's going on? Yep, it worked. Hey, that was it. And you can hear it. All right, listen. But I will say, oh, that one didn't work. I will say that it's hanging up. There we go. That's what I was trying to say, was it's hanging up. See how it stopped halfway right there? And that is the problem. It's actually jammed halfway right there right now. And that is not a good sign. So what happens is okay, I worked that time. Let's try this. How come you're not going on? There we go. And look, it's not pulling it all the way back. So that's a problem on tight doors. So we still have an issue going on here that I'm going to maybe take apart. We're going to go ahead and just pop this bad boy apart just to see maybe what kind of problem we're having in here. So it did fix the problem. That was one major problem there. The other major problem is the hub area is just foobar. So we need to be real careful pulling this off so that it doesn't jab into it as it's coming off. Come on off. Push in. Come on off. So let's take a look at this guy. We have bent in right there. That may be one that was hard to get off. These are all bent in a little bit. Yeah, you. Alright, what's going on here is it's not coming off. It is certainly gooey though. Ah, there we go. Hey, so what happens is there's this little pivot deal, clutch thing, not clutch. Somebody said clutch, but I wasn't trying to talk about a clutch. I was actually talking about there's this little pin in here that you could actually used to order from Alarm Lock. Those of you who have been working on these for a while, you could actually get this part from Alarm Lock themselves, and it's this little, move this out of the way. Everything else is normal in there, but just like anything else, this little doodad right here was a part that you could order from Alarm Lock back in the day when you could actually order parts from, you know, manufacturers, because there's really nothing wrong with anything on the lock aside from this mechanism right here. The initial problem was the latch was broken. I replaced it a couple of years ago, and then recently this one stopped. It would take the code, but it would not activate the lock. You weren't able to activate the lock with it. So on Saturday Morning Live, we actually took apart this fella, and there's nothing wrong with the keypad, but I did take this part off. We're going to go ahead and put this back on, but before we do so, for those of you who did not see live and are just watching this video, this is the inside of a Trilogy keypad, and we could even take it apart further. Looks like if we unscrewed these screws, the circuit board would come off. So there's usually 1 to 3 things that'll happen with these. Number one, this will just fry. The keypad will stop working. It's undoubtedly just a circuit board issue of some kind. Unless you have, unless you work with circuit boards on a daily basis and solder, you probably would not be able to figure out the problem if your keypad stopped working. Another problem is the latch will break. That's a big problem. Actually, 3 or 4 problems. Interior return springs. There is a spring underneath this. We'll go ahead and take it off just for this video. I don't know if I have the right size. Oh, I don't have the right size screwdriver for this. But if you take this off, there's simply a coil spring under here. They're really easy to replace. And you know that's the problem if your lever And you can see this used to be antique brass right there, but it is so old. In fact, it is so old we determined it to be 03 of 03. That's 2003. And you can see just how much wear this has had over the years. But what will happen is the lever, instead of sitting in this position, will be like that. That is an immediate indicator that your return spring is broken, whether it's on the outside or inside. There is actually one in here. Now, of course, with these, to get it off the door, if something fails, you would have to pick the lock. I don't have any picks out here with me. But that's not the point of the video. The point of the video is actually to talk about this clutch and this solenoid mechanism and get this together. So I'm going to put this back because, once again, there's nothing wrong with the electronics that I have found. It is all in the action of the not withdrawing the latch. So what we did on live was we took it apart, as you can see, took it down to the solenoid area to show everybody what is going on in there. You used to could order, this is the solenoid that basically, when it's activated by the power that's run through the batteries and the code, basically this will drop down into the correct position, or it'll twist, or something happens in here. We'll try to see what happens, but this will drop and it lets you activate the handle to undo it. So we got it working again on the Saturday morning live. At this point, I need to put my gloves back on. We got it working again. However, it was still not retracting the latch fully like it should, and was just generally causing problems in general. So if you weren't able to to take these locks apart to any direction, you would have to have a key. With some lever handles, if you can't pick it, you have to drill it or bypass it in some other way. One thing that's possible to do is to pull it down to this position and try to force it, but the tailpiece is, you're not able to do anything there. And there's also a shield that protects the clip. So if you could not pick it to turn the cylinder, if you didn't have a key, you would really have to drill. There's no way to go in and bypass and get the lever handle off. There's our battery pack, and all our pieces are here. So basically, we need to go ahead and clean this up real quick. I'm going to do that with little spurts of various chemicals. There's a disc type thing there. Now, I'm not going to pull this necessarily all the way apart. I'm going to leave this part little together here, just to see. We do have some wear, so what we're looking for is wear or breaks or jagged surfaces once we get all the goo cleaned off of this. Inside the chassis of most any cylindrical lock are going to be these parts. This is very common across cylindrical locks, period. The whole setup with this little plate right here, and then this shaft that's the interior. This is kind of just a general, what you see all the time when you're taking apart or dealing with cylindrical locks, cylindrical levers, anything of that nature. Getting this cleaned up, we see some pretty good wear going on there. There is one rounded side and one kind of flat side. This obviously is the side that this was sliding on. And here's our clutch. So like I said in the live, I very rarely see a whole lot of problems with this actual mechanism. It is fairly well made with kind of roller bearings on each side. Definitely in the world of cylindrical locks, this would be top-notch craftsmanship. I think everybody would agree that they really outdid themselves on this part right here compared to many others. There's many others out there that have tried to do things like this with their locks and failed. while I'm doing this again, I need to find my flathead. What happened to my flathead? There it is. I'm just checking like kind of all the areas right there. We see we have some debris. That's no big deal. Everything looks good. However, unless you compare it to a brand new one, what we're likely going to find is these teeth are going to be a little bit wonky. So that's something that'll happen. We can see there's a fairly big gap. Hopefully we can see. I'm not looking at the behind the camera, but there is a fairly big gap, like it's spread out almost. And really the only way to tell that would be to clean this part up. We're getting kind of gooey here. Always use a electrical safe cleaner because you do have wires all over this bad boy. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. I don't know if I'm going to cut this part or not, but and you don't really have to super clean it. We're just making sure it's not concealing any problems, you know, with the lock itself. Specifically looking at this also, this part right here. That would turn, so there is kind of a, okay, once that, wait a minute, okay, once there's pressure holding on it, it looks like it turns okay. And that, if that's grabby, that would definitely cause some issues, y'all. So let's see, may very well have to pick this to get it the rest of the way apart, because I am curious as to the insides right there. So let me go, let's make sure it won't come apart without, I think we're gonna have to, so to fully take it apart, like I said, we would have to flip this and get it picked. Now this may be actually a mistake. I don't really do this on this channel, as y'all know, but I do have to do it now because it is behind our goal. It's behind our objective. To do A, we have to do, wait, to do B, we have to do A. To do A, we have to do B. This one's old enough, it might actually be a 5-pin. Let's see. Oh well. Okay, there we go. Probably a 5-pin. Oh, I guess we're just going to use this. That? No, what's going on with you? There we go. Now as we can see, you can use regular cylinders in these. But the ones that come with them have this super wide tailpiece. So that super wide tailpiece was really what was blocking me from being able to do anything in here. So what we're going to do now that that is off, we're going to see if we can't get it out. Looks like we're going to be able to by reaching down here, depressing that retainer and pushing. And what will happen is it'll slip out the front like that. So here is the point where we would have to have a little screwdriver. I'm really going to have to, I got one right here. Yay, if we were coming down to the point of checking the lever return springs as well, we would go ahead and take this off. We're going to see how gooey it is. Since we're down to this part, now they come from the factory. The springs when you buy them are they're extremely gooey. But we're just going to check to make sure while we're here that we don't have any anything weird going on with this spring chamber here. We're going to do the same on the inside once we get back to that. It's looking good though. Looking alright to me, so we're good there. Let's put that back. And go ahead and clean off this interior shaft. Get it back in. get it all back together and see what happens. Likely the biggest problem is gonna, wait, this is the part we're looking for. Likely the biggest problem is gonna be, now see, there comes a point where you don't want to take a lot apart. If everything's working well, which it is, you don't really need to keep breaking this down. If you can visually, well, there we go. Okay, there we go. We're gonna keep on breaking this down. You don't need to, because you could just flush it out. But since we're doing what we're doing, we're just gonna go ahead and do it. We're doing it. So this, y'all, is, what did we come up with? 15, 19, 20 something years? 5,000 years? This is another big area right here. So this catches a lot of, and we can already see, if we zoom back up into the camera here, we can see heavy wear. So this likely is our problem right there. Let me make sure I'm in camera so we can show you that. There we go. So you see your heavy wear right there? There's no fixing it. No fixing this one, y'all. There's no way, there's no parts available for that. Even if you take up, even if you can scavenge a part, that part is likely to be just as worn out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and file the burrs off of this with a little file. I don't have a whole lot of hope for it at this point. I think we've discovered the problem. But all we can do is try. We can get it back together. Let's go ahead and put it like right there. Maybe hit that edge with a file. Hit that edge with a file. So that, this whole area right here is what contacts the mechanism to turn it. I'm gonna go ahead and get these burrs off. It's got a burr on the, it's got a burr on that side too. So we're gonna want to kind of file that down as much as possible so that it's not interfering. Now we're not taking, the most important section is here. We don't want to take a lot off this way. But what I'm doing is getting this burr off of the circular part that would maybe intersect and hit another piece of metal and cause it to give us some problems. It's highly likely that can cause a little hang up. So I'm going to go ahead and take both sides down there. I'm going to make sure that all this is just smooth enough. One more little spot. So at this point, you're basically trying to keep this guy alive. So if you have a customer and you've pulled it down to this point and you see this, you're going to have to say, okay, Mr. Customer, guess what it's time for? It's time for a new lock. But everything else seems to be good. Let's go ahead and flush it out and get it back together. Got a retainer we got to deal with there. Come on. Come on. And one more paper towel. Hello.
Hey there, how are you?
Good. What can I help you with?
Need to get 2 of each of these. Do I
Okay.
need to take them off the...
No. Where were we? We were checking this guy out. Again, we could also have some issues in there with some burrs going on. Likely, maybe. Everything combined, but I think we discovered the main problem for sure. And let's finger this real quick. Yeah. And get it all back together. If we can. If we can. I don't know if we can. I don't know if I'm good enough to do this, y'all. This likely goes through here. Click into position. What? And then this thing. No, not yet. This thing. Yes. Now this is exactly like a Schlage would be. Oh, doesn't go that way. Let's try the other way. Oh yeah, there is a flat and around. So let's go around first. See what happens. Is that the way that goes in? That's got to be the way that goes in. And then this one on top. That's where your. This is where I was talking about with the cylinder. That's why I was talking about. The cylinder really fills up that. So if you were to use a cylinder and you used a narrower tailpiece than this, that kind of gives you a problem, because that narrower tailpiece will put a lot more stress on the points of this area. So you need to be real careful if you're switching out the cylinder on one of these with something else, because the regular tailpiece, while it may seem to work in the beginning, now of course most people don't really use the keys a lot with these. So again, it's kind of a, what do you call it, a problem that's not a problem, because very rarely do people actually use the keys. Before I start to put all this back together, we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. So what happens here is, if we had this turned the wrong way, we'd get it all back together. And we're going to pretend like this was on the side. So if I would have put that back together just like that, it would not have been a pretty picture. So if we put this through here, right, this will be our latch side. That's correct. Here. And the lever catch deal is actually, see, it's on the wrong side. So we need to turn that around. See, that would have really messed us up, because we would have gotten it all together and it would have not been correct. At this point, we don't have to put this back in here quite yet. We can go ahead and keep assembling it. These went in the interior, which is right here. We haven't cleaned that up yet. But now what I want to do is go ahead and let's put these guys back together. You're gonna stay up? Oh, I got my thing dirty. Dang it. Dang it, dang it, dang it. Stay, 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 stay. Thank you. Yep, we're gonna have to put this together. This springs are pretty self-explanatory. The goo that's in there is still okay. We don't have to really clean that a lot. Here comes the fun part always of doing this. We want this to be right. Are we right? Both sides look. Could be either or. No, we got the open side there. So that open side, that would need to correspond likely with this doodad. So that needs to go this way. Maybe. I may be wrong here. I think I am wrong. Okay, that's just bent. I think we're okay. We're going to have to bend this back with a pair of pliers. For sure. This plate went in kind of like this. And then we had all this part. So let's go ahead and hope that stays together. Stay. And let's clean this part off. One more paper towel. Go ahead and get this solenoid cleaned up. See if we can get it working a little bit better. Again, we're coming into the electric area, and this is electro. Don't get on me! Electrical stuff. Alright, we see another problem here. There it is. There's our other problem right here. As we expected, both sides are worn out. Let's take a good close look at that. So there we go. This is purely a mechanical failure, y'all. Mechanical failure being this is just walled out. So originally, where's our file? Originally, this whole area stuck out to right here, and it has kind of like ground or pressed in so many times that that's what it's doing. So there's not a lot of comeback again with the other side. Maybe with the other side if it would have been the only problem. But when you're talking about both sides being jammed up like this, it is simply just trash. You can't source. Come on now. We need a bigger file for that, but let's smooth it down anyway because we want to get done and we want to put it back together and we're going to see how well it did. Come on. Whew. I almost need to go over to the belt sander for this one. Okay. Let's get this back together. How'd this go in? Something like this. Something like this. Never do this. Never ever do that. Alright, so this guy had these in here. These little wafers. I don't know what for. Probably just to give this thing, what I guess a solid surface or whatever. That went in kind of like this. We're missing a part. We're missing a part. We're missing. We're missing a part. Well, maybe not. This definitely went through some way or another. Well, we've got it cleaned up mostly, so I guess I'll just have to get my fingers dirty. Where were we? We were trying to get this thing together, and this thing was proving to be somewhat infuriating to figure out, and the reason why is because this doesn't go like this. And I actually did this part on the Saturday Morning Live, not at the beginning of this video, which is probably one reason why I didn't remember what the heck I was doing. That was like a whole video ago, man. So what we have, this thing goes over this, and from what I could tell, this floated just like that. This was just like this. active side. Very, very fun to get back together, right? Very, very fun. It still doesn't sit real flat right there, but then at this point, so basically this turns against this. Go ahead and take these out. There is it looks deeper on this side. Alright, so it goes all back together just like that. Just like that. Not a big deal, right? And then that side is what intersects over here. So we're going to just try to drop all that down in there. And this is where you kind of lose yourself. Because you have to put these springs in. Don't let it shoot into your eye. That wouldn't be good. They can release all of a sudden. But it looks like once we get it all snapped together, we'll be doing good. Yay, yay, yay. Oof, wee. I need to get a pair of pliers and bend all this metal back into shape. We have it blown out pretty wide right there. Still not seating just right. It's okay though. We're gonna get it together. We're gonna make sure. So okay. Remember we had on the outside. We had it. It comes through from the outside and yes, turn that way. So this needs to be on this side of the little mechanism. And on the inside, yep, that's how that needs to be, facing this way. But we're still not seated, alright? That's a problem. It's just not seating down, even though our metal's obviously pretty bad right there. There's still something. Ha! There we go. That's what you do, is you beat the dang thing. Let's go ahead and grab a pair of pliers, squeeze that together, and I think we actually have it soft. So what happens is it probably sucks up that solenoid. You want to see what that does when we plug it up? Let's do that real quick. Let's go ahead and replug this up and see what happens. Yeah, so we need several parts to come over this direction. One of them being this, the other being this right here. Let's get this temporarily held back together. And see if we can see what the solenoid is actually doing. Alright. And this guy. And then this guy. Ooh. So it spins. Did you see that? Watch right in the center of that. Then you would take this and turn it. And then, oh, there it goes. So it's spinning up and down, maybe. Let's go backwards, y'all. Since we're doing all this. Let's just go a little bit backwards. This whole plate right here. Plus I want to bend out these plates because they are pretty rough. I don't know if that happened when I was taking it apart or what. Alright, let's get it back together and actually see what's going on. Let's get the springs out of the way. We know what the springs do. We know what the springs do. Gonna have to be careful. I don't want this thing to fly off and hit me in the head or anything crazy like that. Alright. Plugged up, ready to go. So what that's doing is it's just spinning. Huh. It's not going up or down, it's just spinning. So going back to figuring out what it does, I guess, is when it spins. I have no idea. What would... It's got to be activating this notch. It's got to be going down in that notch right there. I would think. Oh yeah. Hold on. Please hold. We gotta straighten this case up a little bit for it to actually sit right in there. Alright. So it's really just dropping down in that chamber. I guess further. I guess when it's actually on the door and it spins, it must be maybe pushing it. Pushing it to some degree. Alright, again, we're going to get this part together, frustratingly so. Those really, in my opinion, shouldn't be bent out as much as they are. Those look just really bent. I don't know how that part would have gotten bent out, though. Okay, we're gonna grab a pair of pliers. We have to. That's unacceptable. And it's probably bent from just heavy use. It's probably yet another one of those things that is just, you know, out of all the other stuff, you have this thing. And it causes just as much problem as everything else. That was definitely bent. So I'm going to get them back as flat as possible. Yeah, that's much better. That was well worth the time invested, right, y'all? That's much flatter. I mean, it's not perfect by any means. We've got some weird something going on with this plate. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Now we don't. Now we're good. And hold it up. We'll look at it again. Sticking off of the plate a little bit. That's actually probably good since we're in such rough shape. And we had a deep side and a shallow side. So let's slip it over just like that. And make sure all this is lined up correctly down here. Yep, there we go. And make sure this tab is actually facing the wrong way. It's supposed to be facing. Nope. This is supposed to be, I believe, like that. Tab would go there. Yep. Yep. just like that. Oh, my cage. The spring cage got a little tight there, y'all. It's okay. We're gonna whack it down. But before we do, we gotta put the springs in again. Again, watch your face. Don't look directly. Don't look directly at those springs. Look indirectly at them. Or wear safety goggles. Oh, see, that could have hit you. That spring's not quite in right. This is just one of those things you get a feel for, is getting spring cages back together. Alright, and now, oh, holding our breath didn't work, y'all. Holding our breath did not work at all. You gotta hold your tongue just right? Especially when we're fighting the metal right up here, where it snaps together. We're having to kind of get past that little issue where I squeezed it together a little bit too well, or too much, not quite right, however you want to say it. So typically with these you kind of have to do this anyway. Get down on in there. Here, oh, there goes one half. There goes one half. At this point, we're going to try to carefully make sure everything's lined up. Okay, there goes a little bit more, giving way. Oh, a little bit more. Okay, we're getting there, we're getting there. Our springs are probably safe. Ah, bam, bam, bam. And magically, all snaps together. Pretty roughly, we might add. This is the outside. Will not do anything. We need to get this turned to the other side though. Alright, so that's the inside. That's correct. The outside, that would be correct. And then we just want to kind of wiggle everything until we get it to seat like it's supposed to. Ah, there we go. I think that actually did it. It did. It did. And let's go ahead and give it a good final crump across the face here. That just looks pretty wonky. Pretty wonky. Probably from the back too. And we're going to follow up with the little clip that goes over the top of this also. So I think we're okay here. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Make sure and feed our wire up through the wire hole. Being careful not to lacerate it any more than it has gone through. Gone through already. And alright, here's where it gets a little dicey whenever you're putting these back on, because again, we had to bend those tabs every which way during the whole bendy process. They're not lining up real well, so likely you have to come off just like this. Give us a little squeeze together there and there to make these things go in the holes that they're supposed to. That's just twisted. That's just twisted, man. Okay, there we go. All right. Lastly, getting on in this video, did not mean for this to go this long. We had, yes, these clips right here. They need to go back in and be spread apart. One more. So you can see how long this could feasibly take you to do. I hope that we've all learned a valuable lesson on what is going on when the latch is not retracting. You know, this video applies primarily to that because, again, this is a fair representation of almost any cylindrical lock body that's out there. Whenever you get issues with latches not retracting or bogging down or not pulling right, if it's not the latch itself, you can almost assuredly be almost totally assured. Now, we did have to bend this, so what we're going to want to do before we put all this back together is make sure our latch is going to go in while we have it away from the door. And we can see kind of one of the problems here is this case kind of bent in a little bit. So let's see if we can bring that out. Maybe a bit, maybe causing just another exacerbation of problems with the lock if that's not seated right, and if it's not, it's gonna obviously not work at all. So our inside's actually pulling it back. That was never really the problem. But we will, is this outside? This is the outside. We didn't really clean this off real well, so I'm just gonna spray it. However, you already know what the problem is, so and before, as you're putting, I should say not before, but as you're putting this all back together, you really want to understand that lubrication, re-lubrication, I should say, is pretty imperative. So at this point, we are going to want to get you a heavier spray. We've discovered that this is not the greatest long-lasting. If I was really going to use this, I would use that Lock Shot, because Lock Shot came out real well in testing. Did a pretty good job. So we're gonna key up the cylinder real quick and get it back together. We don't really need the cylinder in there to try it though, so we're just gonna put the handle in without the cylinder. So there's our clutch. But what we are gonna want to do is permanently attach these guys together, and for that I have these little doodads. So what we're going to do is spread this out just a bit more. And go ahead and perma-crump it. Say perma-crump it. We want to perma-crump it. And this was, again, one of the issues that was plaguing our lock to begin with. We discovered this in the live that we had some wire breakage going on. So to cure that problem in the live, we went ahead and stripped it and cut it and crimped it, and we're going to try our crimpers on this guy. Not really. I don't think these are really meant. Oh yeah, it works beautifully. It did not work so beautifully on the blue ones because they have a softer jacket. That actually works pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and crimp the other side. This is what you would be doing a lot of times in the field where you have to do rewiring of these fellas. Because when people put them on the door, if you don't put it on the door just right, it will act up. If you have a crimp in your wire, it will definitely cause electrical issues with it and cause it to act erratic, cause it to not lock or unlock correctly. So if you're putting a new one on and you just have plain old, issues with it, weird glitchy electrical type issues, your problem is just your wire is pinched, like right here. See how it got pinched? So like I said in the live, when you're putting this on the door, this is the plate. You want to make sure that your wire is routed correctly through here, because if you don't, and this wire, this is against the inside of the door, and you tighten that down, you will have this problem right here. And the closer you get to that solenoid wire here, you're more dangerous. So I would, if this was still in good condition and able to be used, I would heat shrink this area before I did that. However, we've found out that the lock is just not gonna hold up, but we will find out if everything works. So once we got that, and lastly, we have that. Now let's see, what we were having problems with before was the latch not retracting all the way. It's been reverted back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and even worse now, even worse. However, it is working. Look at that. It only retracts it halfway compared to the inside. So the inside would still hold up for some period of time anyway. But we did clear up the problem, I believe. Let's see. We did clear up that problem. If we remember, if we go back to the live, it was not coming back out, and it is now. So that probably had a lot to do with just, goo, all those little catchy things that we filed down, and just a combination of all the problems put together was causing that not to come all the way up. However, she's a goner, as we put in, this is Judgment Day for this guy. It's time for it to meet its graveyard, because that, oh, it's pulling a little bit more now. No. So that's it, y'all. Judgment Day for this guy. Simply because they don't make parts like this available. It'd be nice to be able to buy, a whole new chassis, like solenoid, everything, just switch out the body of it. But no, companies nowadays are just way more interested in selling you a whole new lock. So we did fix a couple of problems, but we could not fix a couple of other problems. Worst case scenario is they just use it as a key lock. I have a lot of customers who, during their good times of years, back in the day, they had these put on their doors. However, just due to not having funding when they broke, they didn't have any other, they couldn't afford to spend X amount of money to put a new one in. So in that case, you would pick the cylinder and just use it as a key lock. It's just a fancy looking key lock. Anyway, thanks for watching, y'all. If you have any questions or comments, sorry this got to be so long, but it always takes a few minutes to diagnose problems and take something apart and put it back together functioning as it could be. I appreciate you guys watching. As always, we'll catch you next video. Ugh.